In a world where carbs are your enemy, you need one man to help you fight your battles. That man is Jimmy.
Combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Instagram Live, and we're here with another episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and you can see how we start the show. We do it starting off on Instagram. So go follow me on Instagram if you're not already. LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Living Low Carb Man is the name there. And once you're there, you can engage live in the content just like all these beautiful people are doing right now. If you missed the live, you can watch the replay for up to 24 hours on Instagram. But after 24 hours, it does disappear. But never fear, we put them all on YouTube for you. So go look up Jimmy Rants on YouTube. You will find the show. Finally, we have a Jimmy Rants podcast, which has the best of the best moments of this here show in podcast form, both on Apple Podcasts and now on Stitcher. JimmyRants.com is the website. Today's Jimmy Rants is all about something that I've been doing the last 4 weeks. So those of you that are regular viewers and listeners to Jimmy Rants, you know that I've been doing a keto carnivore diet. And so I've been eating a higher fat version of carnivore, which people, it's so funny, people are like, so how do you eat carnivore? I'm like, it's this thing called meat and animal-based foods. That's how you eat carnivore. And then other people that say, well, where's the vegetables on this carnivore diet? What? Anyway, what I want to talk about is why some people may do better on a higher fat keto version of carnivore than just a plain carnivore diet. So let's talk about definitions here. So when you talk about carnivore, yes, it's higher in fat. It's not all chicken breasts and things like I did in that experiment last year. But it's still not necessarily paying much attention to having higher levels of fat as a means for getting into ketosis. So I've talked with Dr. Sean Baker, the guy, he's coming out with a book called The Carnivore Diet in April. And even he has said, oh yeah, a carnivore diet isn't necessarily a ketogenic diet. So carnivore could probably fall somewhere between like 60-65% fat, which by all measures is a higher fat diet as a preponderance of the total calories. But what I've found in doing my own self-testing of this, you guys, is doing a very high protein, which made my fat fall between like 55-60% fat, and then doing a very high fat, which I did an experiment last year of upwards of 90% fat, 85 to 90. I found, for me anyway, the sweet spot for me doing very well eating a mostly meat-based type of diet is between 70 and 80% fat. And so I had to tinker with that. I had to figure that out. And there was no equation that helped me figure that out other than trial and error of seeing this very high protein with, like 60% fat, this very high fat with 90% fat. Finding that middle ground was what was so key for me to figure out that if I'm going to do a carnivore diet, I need to do it with a higher fat amount. So have you guys noticed this? Those of you that maybe eat mostly meat and animal-based foods diet, do you find that including higher fat into it than, say, a traditional carnivore diet has helped you? Because I have seen where hunger and symptoms of hypoglycemia and other things coming on when my blood or when my total fat intake goes below 70% as a percentage of my total calories. My sweet spot where I really feel the best is somewhere around 75 to 80% of my calories coming from dietary fat. And it's funny because I've been posting a lot of the pictures of my keto carnivore meals on a daily basis over the past 28 days as I've been doing this experiment, which ends today, by the way. I'm going to keep eating keto carnivore. I'm just not going to, take a picture and post it and do all the stuff that I've been doing. It's so funny because I've been posting the pictures and people are like, oh my gosh, look at all that protein. I'm like, you realize 3/4 of it's fat, right? That fat is so nutrient dense, it can be compacted into a very small amount of space, and yet it still fills up the plate. So they see the meat on the plate, oh, all that protein, not realizing it's fatty. Anywho, so if you go carnivore, the goal and the objective is to basically eat meat. If you go keto carnivore, where you're trying to purposely be in a state of nutritional ketosis and you're including higher fat amounts, you have to be deliberate in making sure you're getting adequate amounts of fat into that diet. So a lot of people will probably see benefit just from simply going carnivore. Others of us, and I would make the argument that if you're insulin resistant, higher fat carnivore is what you got to do. And the fat gives a satiation. The fat helps to calm down the insulinogenic response that could be happening in your body. Fat just produces so many good things when you're trying to be keto carnivore that it would be silly to just eat meat without regard to the fat content. So that's what I wanted to share. I wanted to make sure that I got this message out there loud and clear, because a lot of people, oh, you're doing carnivore now. And I'm always the first to qualify that I'm not just doing carnivore, I'm doing keto carnivore. And that is what's given me the benefits that I've been able to see and that hopefully I will continue to see as I go down this path. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. Welcome in, welcome in. Thanks for being here. Looks like it's time for you to go clothes shopping, says Joshua. Oh, yeah, the clothes are getting a little bit big. But that's okay. I'm good with that. What's the difference between higher fat carnivore and plain carnivore? So I just explained that, Ruby. Hopefully that helped you out. Hello, Joette. Thanks for being here. Seema Ruby, what's your take on eating dairy, organ meats, and eggs on carnivore? They're all carnivore. Dairy is animal-based. Organ meats are animal-based. Eggs are animal-based. What you don't eat on carnivore is avocado oil, types of dressings or sauces or mayonnaises and things like that. You don't eat coconut-based foods, even though they're higher in fat. You're not eating those. But all of those things that you mentioned, dairy, organ meats, and eggs, are all perfectly fine eating carnivore. Hello from Arctic Chicagoland. Yeah, I heard HV More. You guys are under a blizzard right now. Keto, Tiny, and Vintage. Yes, even some days higher fat than protein, especially with carnivore or keto, 1 meal a day. Everyone really should hack and see what ratios work best for them. Yes. And I find that I do end up eating about 1 meal a day. Like today, I haven't eaten yet. I'm about to go to the store over there and get some more fatty meats, and I am going to have my 1 meal today. And I think the higher fat is so critical to going those long periods of time of fasting. And this is another thing about higher fat carnivore. You're able to eat 1 meal and then possibly go 24 hours before you have to eat again. I don't know that I could get that to that metabolic state if I was eating a higher protein version of carnivore. And again, let me be very clear. The carnivore diet is probably around 65 to 70% fat. What I'm talking about doing is around 75-ish% fat to bump it up into the ketogenic range. I found I do best with that. I feel best with that. My satiation, my energy levels, all of that is best when I bump up the fat a little bit more. Yes, I've noticed that, says Grandma Does Keto. I need the fat over protein for epilepsy as well as feeling better overall, continued high energy, extended fasting ability, and the weight loss. Continuing on into February with Keto Carnivore. So yes, What's really interesting is if you try to match exactly the number of grams of fat with the number of grams of protein, that alone, let's say it's 120 grams of fat, 120 grams of protein, that alone is about a 70% fat diet, okay? So because fat is 9 calories per gram and protein is 4. So if you just bump up the fat just a little bit more to say 145 grams of fat and still have that 120 grams of protein, you've now put yourself in about that 75% range, which could make all the difference in the world. So maybe you've tried carnivore, you didn't like it because you had some of the symptoms of not having enough fat. Add in a little more animal-based food fats and watch the difference. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't have seen it myself. Somehow they think that saturated fats are just liquids below the meat. Says Alberto. Yeah, people that look at a plate of food and when food is warmed up, it can be very deceiving to see fat. It's almost like I want to cook and have a very fatty meal and then let it get cold just to show people, can you see the fat now? Because when it gets cold, stick it like in the freezer. When it gets cold, you can physically see the fat protruding off of the food. And then, oh, there it is. Not realizing that when you're eating it, when it's warm, that it could be clear and it's hard to see fat. But there is fat in all those meals that I've been posting online. Rachel Floyd Rose, the good thing about the keto lifestyle is you can tweak it and make changes until you find what works for you. Exactly, Rachel. And if you do well on a traditional ketogenic diet and you're able to include vegetables and all kinds of things in there and you're doing well with that, please keep doing that. But those of us that have done this a little while and maybe want to up the game a little bit more, kind of doing a carnivorous style diet, and in this case, a keto carnivore diet with more fat could be something that will help as well. Stepan, I see that you have a general question, and as always, PSA, if you have a generalized question that is not on topic with this Jimmy Rant show, because this is a specific show that I do, you can email me livinglowcarbman@charter.net, or you can send me a message through Instagram. But to answer your question, we just did a podcast about that on Monday, so go to llvlc.com. My wife Christine and I on the Nutritional Pearls podcast talked all about histamines. So go listen to that podcast. You'll get everything you ever wanted to know. Dr. Joe 413, seeing your success in yummy foods has inspired me. I also feel better on a higher fat diet. Yep. Hi from the Bahamas. I will send you some sunshine. Thank you, Rachel. Yes, most days are definitely this ratio, and I love it, says Keto Tiny. Thank you. Does Keto Carnivore allow avocados and a little vegetable? No, Elvira. But at the end of the day, you do you. You do your journey if you want to include those things in there. But if you're trying to stick with a carnivorous diet that would be ketogenic, you're avoiding all plant-based foods. So that would include the little bit of vegetables, that would include avocados. Are those healthy foods? Absolutely. But when you're trying to be carnivore, those are not carnivore. Yeah, that's been the funniest thing to me as I've been posting my pictures of my carnivore diet. People are like, where's the vegetables? And I'm like, well, you show me a meat-based vegetable, I'll be happy to eat it. Livin' healthy, when you think more fat is needed, do you go for more dairy fat or more fat in the meat itself? Or does it matter? Going to experiment with carnivore the next 2 weeks? That's a great question, Liz. I have found that the natural fats that are in most meats, unless you're going for brisket or pork belly or something that's got obviously a lot more fat in it, it's very difficult, even with like a ribeye steak. A ribeye has about 67, 68%, and it's considered one of the fattier cuts. So I think dairy can certainly help if you're able to tolerate dairy. I have definitely included dairy into my diet, or even put lard or butter or ghee or any of these other tallow, any of these animal-based fats with those meats to get the higher percentage of fat into the diet. I think I'm going to do a trial in February of Carnivore. I'm really curious, looking forward to Friday's podcast. Thank you, Borakua on the Moon. Yeah, we had Dr. Sean Baker. We recorded today, the one that will air this Friday. Really interesting stuff, you guys, what Sean is doing with the carnivore diet. How long have you been keto? Tips for beginners. So again, Sharon, that's a general question, and we stick to the topic down in the pin post. Email me, and I keep using the long version, but I made a shorter version of my email. Jimmy, which is my name, Jimmy, at llvlc.com. Jimmy at llvlc.com. And we'll be happy to help you out. Sue says, I eat keto, I still get hungry and have an appetite doing intermittent fasting. So again, that's a general question. Guys, don't ask general questions on these Jimmy Rants. If you've got general questions that are apart from what we're talking about here, please send those to me in a private message or on email. What about fish, says Ruby. Yeah, fish is certainly carnivore. My problem with fish, though, is it tends to be leaner. Yes, there's fatty fish, but even the fattiest fish is not high enough in fat without triggering a lot of the hunger and things that I would get from a higher protein. So even a fatty fish, which has great omega-3 fatty acids, so don't get me wrong, very healthy for you, but I get hungrier after eating fish. Anybody else get hungry eating fish? It's why I tend to choose red meat, because I feel so much more sated from eating that kind of thing. Keto on a paper plate says, since women need much smaller amounts of protein than men, can a woman do carnivore and stay under 60 to 70 grams of protein? Well, I'm certainly not going to tell you to go under any certain level of protein. That's certainly a choice that you'll have to figure out on your own, but there's certainly no harm in tinkering around with the macros to see where you fall into a very comfortable range. Now, if you only do 60 to 70 grams of protein, you're kind of limiting the amount of and the kinds of protein that you would have. So let's say you have a 5-ounce steak and a few eggs. That right there is almost 70 grams of protein. So I'd be very careful about putting some subjective number on the protein. Here's the thing about carnivore, that a traditional ketogenic diet, what I've noticed, I'm able to eat a little more protein than I was on my traditional keto diet. Okay, so when you go carnivore and you try to become keto carnivore, don't think you have to keep your protein at that very strict level that you did on the ketogenic. When you eliminate the carbohydrates, that gives you a little more wiggle room to increase your protein. So if you think you need 60 to 70 grams of protein, maybe you could do 115, 120 grams of protein and then do like 130, 140 grams of fat, and you'll be right in that keto carnivore range. So check that out and see how it does for you. How do you track fat on a fresh burger? No nutritional info in the package. I got the 4 patties from Publix, says Olga. So you can actually go and do a Google search. Google has a lot of great information. Just type in the name of the food and then nutrition facts, Olga, and it will come right up on the screen, all of the nutrition facts. That's how I've determined it with all of the foods that I've consumed on my keto carnivore experiment. Ketosaurus Jax, no one bats an eye if you eat an entire box of Pop-Tarts, but they lose their minds when and say you'll have a heart attack if you eat pork belly. Yeah. It's a weird world we live in. I'm researching this higher fat keto carnivore. Seems like adding more lipase will help, says Borakua on the Moon. What do you think? Yeah, I think any digestive enzymes could certainly help you with the higher fat. I am taking digestive enzymes. I always take them. My nutritional therapy practitioner wife makes sure that I take them. So yeah, I think that's a great idea if you're concerned, but it shouldn't be any more fat if you've already been keto than what you've normally been doing on keto. What if you add butter to fish or chicken? Yeah, Rebecca K, you could. I've found, because people say, well, you could make chicken breast higher in fat if you add butter. And I'm like, why? Why would you do that? I get hungry eating chicken breast. I get hungry eating fish. No matter how much butter I put on it, I still get hungry. So I suppose it could increase the fat, but I think there's some kind of insulinogenic response, at least in me, with those foods in my body. I get really hungry eating fish, says Kitty Caddick. Yeah, me too. Alberto says, this is my second day of raw keto carnivore. Right now, liver with warm butter and lard on top, and I'm still alive. That doesn't sound very appetizing, Alberto. Fatty fish like salmon fillets are side dishes for the ribeye, says Grandma Does Keto. Now, I could eat I could eat salmon with my ribeye and a little butter on top. That's for sure. T Stark MK42 on your keto carnivore. Have you felt the need for supplements? Yeah, I've taken my regular supplements that I've always taken. So digestive enzymes and vitamin D and a complete multivitamin from my company Keto Living, ketoliving.com. I take quite a few supplements, but I've been doing those for years. So I didn't stop doing it just because I started Keto Carnivore. Although Alberto says animal food is the most nutrient-dense food with no supplements needed. I think in general you're right, Alberto, but some people might need a little bit of help with very targeted, specific ones for them. Sue says, if experimenting with carnivore, how long do you suggest trying it? Try it as long as you want. I wouldn't try it for 2 days and say, well, that sucked. And I wouldn't do it any less than 30 to 60 days, because by then you'll be able to see, is this doing anything? But again, don't just necessarily do plain carnivore. What we're talking about here today is why a higher fat keto carnivore may be better than just doing plain carnivore. I'm going to keep correcting people when they say, oh, you're doing carnivore. No, I'm not. I'm doing keto carnivore, and there is a difference because it's made all the difference for me in all the benefits that I've seen so far. Mish Keto says, I've done carnivore before, didn't use the keto macros. I felt pretty good. I couldn't go for 24 hours without 2 meals. I've only done keto carnivore for 4 days, and I'm finding 1 meal a day is easy, and I feel so much better. Thank you for sharing your experience, because that's exactly what's happened for me. And I do think it's the higher fat content that's allowing that satiety to take place. You're calming down all of the insulinogenic response that would happen from the higher protein intake, and getting that fat up is truly the key to making this work. Ketosaurus Jax, I needed bile salts when I first started keto because I was a vegetarian for nearly 20 years. My body has adapted well to fat now. My gallbladder is so happy to have a job again. And good thing you didn't have to have it removed. Christine had hers removed, and it was horrible. And so today she has no gallbladder, but she's able to tolerate more fats now because of various things that she does. I wouldn't try it for 2 days and say, well, that sucked. Yeah, some people would, though, Chrissie Hsu. Some people, well, that didn't work. That felt horrible. I miss my bread or whatever. That they do it. Keto Tiny and Vintage, your next book should be Keto Carnivore Cure. Yes, somebody said I should do Carnivore Clarity. And I kind of ran it up the poll to my publisher to see what they thought. And they're not so sure carnivore itself is going to have legs as a trend. I told them you might be surprised. So they're actually the ones releasing Dr. Sean Baker's book, The Carnivore Diet. I said, I guess we'll see how Sean's book does. It should be the higher fat approach right in the pipeline behind the fasting cure. Would be great sellers for your Cure series. Well, I think I've only got the one book in the Cure series. I have 2 books in the Clarity series. So I'm thinking Keto Carnivore Clarity has a nice ring to it. Maybe. Down the line, I got plenty of books in the pipeline. How have your blood sugars responded? So I wore a continuous glucose monitor for 2 weeks during this experiment, and blood sugar was always in the 70s and 80s the entire time. Sometimes it was upper 60s. Sometimes it got to the upper 80s. This is before and after meals, you guys. But it never got above like 88 and never went below like 67. So pretty tight range for the blood sugar. Are you taking any electrolytes? I've been having heart palpitations, taking electrolytes, magnesium citrate at night before bed. Any thoughts? Sassy Frassy, number 1, don't take magnesium citrate. That's the one that gives you poopy pants at night. You want to do magnesium oxide. That's going to be a much better version, or magnesium glycinate. Those are the two kinds that will not give you diarrhea. So if you're having some stomach digestive issues, taking the magnesium citrate, that's what you need to switch to. But back to your question. Yes, I have an electrolyte supplement that I use from Keto Vitals. So definitely taking those as part of this. But I've been doing that anyway. And it will help with those palpitations for sure. Do you find yourself gravitating towards certain meats now and being turned off to another? Says livin' healthy. That's hard to say. Yeah, I love beef. I absolutely could eat beef till the cows come home, all pun intended. I do like pork as well. It has to be the fattier cuts of pork, so like bacon or sausage. I'm not a fan of chicken. Even the fattier cuts of chicken, chicken, just reminds me of my low-fat days, all that chicken breast I used to eat. And fish makes me hungry, as I mentioned. Yeah, so I gravitate mostly to red meat types of food, beef and pork and fatty sausages and things like that. Oh, and tailored, Tall Redhead. I don't know why I said tailored. Tall Redhead 1014 says, do you eat eggs? Yes, I have 27 backyard chickens, and so I'm able to get all the eggs that I could ever want. And so I am eating eggs, just not every day. I developed an allergy to them a couple years ago when I was consuming them every single day. And so I only cycle them in once in a while, maybe like every 6-7 days into my diet. But yes, I do eat eggs. Those do qualify for carnivore. David Zucker, can you give some more examples of meals you enjoy on this? Really, any meat would be perfectly acceptable. I've posted every single meal that I've had for the past 28 days on my social media channels. So you're watching here on Instagram. So people watching on YouTube, go look at my profile page on Living Low Carb Man on Instagram, and you can see every single meal of all the foods that I've eaten for the past 28 days to get an idea of what it looks like to eat this way. Do you still drink a keto coffee on this Keto Healing Coach? I hate coffee. People that know Jimmy Moore know I despise coffee. I just don't like coffee. So no, I don't. But I would say if you get a keto coffee, you would have to use butter. You could not use coconut oil or MCT oil. So it would mostly be butter or ghee in the coffee. And I guess you could get it that way. I never had pork before going keto. Jewish family, then vegetarian. I was missing out. Pigs are so delicious. Yes, Jax, they really are. They really are. Cicely says lamb is great too. Yeah, lamb is, but it's a little harder to find lamb than it is beef and pork, sadly. You can't really find it quite as readily as you can those others, which are ubiquitously available. All right, so guys, the bottom line in this Jimmy Rants is you're hearing a lot about carnivore. I see it as a subset of keto, but if you want to get the full results, some people are going to have to do higher fat keto carnivore to get the full results in their weight and their health goals. For me, I've lost over 20 pounds doing this now in the past 28 days. I'm about to get a whole bunch of blood work done tomorrow. We'll see what happens in the before and after of that, but I assume my insulin levels have come down. I assume that I've been able to improve inflammation markers and all the relevant markers on my blood work. And I credit the higher fat content that I've been able to do with this version of carnivore over just a plain traditional carnivorous diet. All right, guys, that's it for this Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. You can see how we start off on Instagram. So go follow me there at Livin' Low Carb Man. That's LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, you can engage live in the content, just like all my regular awesome people did here today. Thank you guys for being here. You can also watch it up to 24 hours on replay on Instagram. And if you miss the replay on Instagram, it's okay. We pop all of the past episodes on YouTube. So go follow me on YouTube. Subscribe. I've picked up about 2,000 new subscribers since I started doing these Jimmy Rants over on YouTube. But I have plenty more room for all the rest of you that want to subscribe there. Go follow me there. Type in Jimmy Rants as a keyword search. You will find the show. And then finally, we have a Jimmy Rants podcast on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. All of these links, you guys, are at jimmyrants.com. So until next time, we'll see you then.